Hi, and welcome to the Chapter 2 webinar on the literature review. Just a little bit about us before we get started. Statistic Solutions is the name of our company, and you can see what we offer: dissertation consulting, editorial support for dissertations, and advanced scholarly projects. After the presentation, we do have other presentations too on different chapters of the dissertation, different aspects of the dissertation. These are just informative presentations. And if you are interested in signing on for assistance, you can do so. It's a complimentary, no commitment to sign on. Consultation, 30 minutes. And this is the person you would contact, Janine Glace. That's her email address, which you can copy and paste, and her phone number. I'll also repeat those at the end of the presentation, so we can have another shot at if you missed them the first time. Okay, so the contents for the presentation, we're going to cover typical aspects of the literature review, the introduction, literature search strategy, the actual review of the literature, and the summary. I want to kind of reinforce early that this is based on a standard 5-chapter dissertation model. Not all dissertations follow this model, but most do. Sometimes the literature review may be a different chapter, but the purpose and the nature of the literature review itself is fairly standard. But again, I just want to impress upon you to always follow your school's template, because sometimes there are some differences. So that at the end of the day, follow your school's template, even though a lot of the structure of the lit review will be similar across schools. Okay, so the introduction to the literature review, basically you want to restate the purpose of your study, remind the reader of your research problem. In other words, why your study is important and why it needs to be conducted, and preview contents of the chapter, just what the chapter will include. And the idea is just to reorient the reader, in which you do basically at the beginning of each chapter, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, just kind of resets your reader about what your study is about, why it's important to conduct before you move on. And also, again, previewing contents of the chapter. Again, follow the template for your school. Most schools want to see some kind of a literature search strategy. Sometimes they don't, but I would say most do. Sometimes it's called different things. But essentially what it is it's not a long section, maybe a couple paragraphs, but they want to know that you have conducted a comprehensive search for material on your topic. So what they're looking for here is, describing your search. So which includes, you want to list the databases that you searched. You want to list the search tools that you used. Usually people are searching online, mention that, that you're searching online through your library, your school's library's online portal, usually mention that. They also want to see, the search, if you search any specialized journals for your field, you can mention those as well if you search them. They want to see key terms that you used, and the key terms they will include your variables, your factors that you're studying, the major concepts, maybe the theory that you're using. So they just want to know the terms that you actually used as search terms and any combinations of those terms. And also any way that you, when you performed your search, if you filter to qualify the information in any way. In other words, did you use English only? Did you use full text only as a way to modify your search? You want to mention date of publication. Typically, schools want recent information or recent studies used for the lit review, and basically throughout the study if possible, but in particular the literature review. Some schools want most studies and most information in the lit review recent within 5 years of the time that you're going to complete your dissertation. That's not hard and fast. Some schools want 5 years. Some schools will stretch it out to 10 years. Some schools it doesn't matter. You can have older material. But again, I would check with your school about that if it's on the school template. If it's not, you may want to ask your chair. But a good rule of thumb is always the more recent, the better, even if your school doesn't absolutely require it. Because the idea of the literature review is that you want to look at and review and analyze the research on your topic, and the more recent, the better, because it gives us a kind of a current or a recent snapshot of the literature on your topic. Also, things that if people conducted a study on your topic 20 years ago, a lot's changed in 20 years, or especially in relation to your topic, things may be different. So that's another reason that information, may not be current. So usually try to stick as recent as possible, unless there's a reason to go back to a foundational study. Now that's okay. Sometimes you need to go back to a foundational study precisely because it is foundational and still important to the research. But mostly stay recent, and include that in your the way you modified your search. And you absolutely want to reinforce that when you conducted your search that you focused on peer-reviewed academic articles. That is really the standard. You can use books, but most schools want you to use books sparingly. The use of websites are typically frowned upon, and you can use websites for, like government websites, for statistics and things like that. But as far as actual scholarship, the currency is peer-reviewed academic studies. So you definitely want to include that you had the peer review box checked when you were on your literature search strategy. Also, in all cases, for throughout the study and even the literature review, it's always helpful to look at examples of approved dissertations from your school, just to get an idea of how people handled these sections, because we can go over them and give you kind of generalities, but sometimes it's really helpful to see what somebody actually did. So I encourage you to do that as well. Okay. For most schools, the theoretical framework typically comes after the literature search strategy. However, again, follow your school's templates. Some schools don't require the theoretical framework in Chapter 2. Some schools only require it in Chapter 1. Some schools require a mention of it in Chapter 1 and an expanded discussion of it in Chapter 2. So if your school does require you to talk more about your theoretical framework in Chapter 2, this is what it should include. Like I said, it should be an extended discussion of your theoretical framework that may appear in Chapter 1 if your school requires that. And basically what you want to do is, there's some common elements here. just simply identify who developed the theory with a citation with the year. Describe what they developed the theory for, to understand or to explain whatever it is they developed it for. Define the theory. This is very important. Sometimes people want to go on and start talking about other things, about their theory, about how it relates to their study, but first of all, you have to define it, what it is. Define any associated components. Sometimes theories have elements to them or components. You want to discuss those. Okay, and let's see, define the theory components. All right. Now, sometimes we will, if we're looking at theories, say, let's just take emotional intelligence as a theory. There may be different researchers that define it in slightly different ways. And some people think they have to kind of cover all those definitions. You don't, not for your theoretical framework. Just focus on the one that you will be using. And if there's some question about that and you're not sure, the theory should be associated with, if you're doing a quantitative study and you're using a scale or a tool or measurement, that usually has some theoretical background to it. So you want the theory or the researchers or the theorists who are associated with typically with the tool or the instruments you're using. So for example, if we're talking about emotional intelligence, again, you may have researcher A has a scale, researcher B has a scale, researcher C has a scale. They'll have slightly different versions of definitions of emotional intelligence. If you're using researcher C's instrument, you don't want to use researcher A's definition of emotional intelligence. You want to use researcher C, whose instrument you're using, you want to use their definition of emotional intelligence. Okay, discuss a little bit what researchers have used the theory for, and discuss a little bit that researchers are still using it. That helps to show that the theory is still kind of valid and it's still useful to researchers. And a little bit about how it connects to your study, how specifically is it going to inform or help explain what you're studying, which can be a little tricky, and there's no real trick to it. Again, check out examples to see how people have done that, but there should be a way that your theory connects to or helps explain the factors in what you're studying. Okay, now the next section, the review of the literature, is really kind of the bulk of the chapter, like 80% of the chapter. And this is where I think people kind of throw up their hands and say, this is just like so much information. I have all these studies, how do I organize it? And the secret is to just focus on your factors and your variables and your major concepts, right? So if you don't have to cover research on your entire topic, it just the major concepts. And so section the review of the literature out based on your variables, or on your factors, or on the major concepts. You could have headers for each one. Once you have if you're doing emotional intelligence, as connects to, say, self-efficacy, you're going to want to have a section on each of these things and have an introduction at the beginning, and then you want to get quickly to the recent research on that topic or on that construct as it relates to your study. So when you're drafting the information, part of what you want to do is you want to synthesize material and analyze the material at the same time. Synthesis means that you're bringing, let me say I have a paragraph here on the synthesis. Okay. you're bringing parts together to form a whole, right? So this isn't anything new to us, right? We're bringing information from different areas to create something new to make a point. Okay, so you want to have a topic and see what people have said about that, the topic or the idea that you're talking about in your study. See what researchers, what kind of studies they've conducted on it, right? What were the purpose of the studies? Some of the elements include participants, how did they collect data, how did they analyze data, and really important is what did they find, the findings of the studies. And synthesis involves kind of seeing how findings relate to one another. Well, researcher A found this, but researcher B found something else. So you kind of want to put those findings in conversation with each other. Sometimes they agree. And then how that relates to your study or how it informs your study. You want to include that too. And the synthesis, people sometimes get hung up on the paragraph, at the paragraph level. And I just tell them it's just standard paragraphing. You have a topic sentence, evidence or discussion of the topic, which is the meat of the paragraph, and a summary sentence or transition to the next topic. Now, the only difference is that these will be on components of your dissertation, pulled from the studies that you're reviewing. So let's take a look at a sample paragraph. I don't need to go through it all here for you, but you can see I've got it highlighted, the topic sentence, evidence or discussion related to the topic, and you have a summary or transition sentence at the end. Again, the only difference or something that would be specific to your literature review would be that this would be information related to your study, pulled from the studies that you're reviewing. And again, sometimes it will involve things like, the population. So-and-so conducted a quantitative study on teaching self-efficacy and emotional intelligence. They included this population. They, whether to identify whether the study was quantitative or qualitative, what they found, and discuss a little bit about if those findings relate to other findings that of the studies you're looking at, and kind of how that relates to your own study or how it informs your own study. Analysis, this kind of happens, it can happen kind of throughout as you're reviewing the literature. So not only do you want to kind of review it and summarize it, you want to make some evaluations and analyses along the way. So this would involve noting any shortcomings or gaps in the studies. Maybe somebody did a study on your topic, but they didn't include the population that you're going to include, which would it'd say there's research on your topic, but not quite on your sample or your population. Note trends and gaps in the research. In other words, so what seems to be the focus of researchers, and that also shows you what they're not focusing on, which may help to make an argument for your study, right? If people are kind of ignoring what you've been doing, that helps to make a case for why you should do it. So throughout, especially at the end, in the summary, and we'll get to that in a minute, reiterate your research problem and the need for your study. So part of the analysis involves making an argument throughout that these studies are not really getting at what your study is designed to do. And so really the whole lit review culminates in making an argument for why your study is needed. Here's what's been done. I've reviewed it, and here are the trends, but here are also the gaps, hence the need for my study. And the summary, just like, summary of other chapters, recap the major points from the chapter. Here are the trends, here's what I found in the literature. Then remind the reader of the research problem based on what's in, which you were just reviewed, and what's not in the literature. Again, the lit review should be kind of an implicit and sometimes explicit argument for why your study is needed based on what's in the literature and what's not. Reiterate the need for your study. And that is kind of generally the purpose and the approach to a lit review and the structure. Again, the different schools will have different specifics, and also what makes the lit review challenging too, to kind of go over in a general way, is that everybody's lit review is going to be different, just like everybody's study is going to be different. It's going to have different factors, it's going to have different variables, different major concepts. So the content is largely based on those unique things about your study. And again, here are our numbers if you're interested in signing on for help, or just talking to somebody about what we offer. Again, there's no commitment to signing on, just it's a complimentary 30-minute consultation. Those are our hours, Eastern time, and Janine Glace, that's her email address, and that is our phone number. I'll leave that up. But I do want to ask at this point if there's any questions that I can help you answer. Okay, anybody? Okay, hold on a second. Let me see here. Somebody has a question. Let's see. Is there something I need to do to hear the audio? Okay. At the beginning, but we have a copy of slides. Yeah, if you can't get a copy of slides, we send actually we send them to everybody who's attending. We will send everybody a copy. Someone will send you a copy of the slides a little later. Do you offer services for candidacy paper? Explain to me what is a candidacy paper? I'm not sure what that is. Let me see if I can unmute your mic. Hi. I can hear you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for taking my question.
Yeah.
So for the university that I attend, before we defend the actual dissertation, we need to submit a candidacy paper, which is, I guess you could say, a smaller version of what the actual dissertation paper looks like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it sounds like it might be a prospectus or a concept paper or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, we help with that. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, anybody else? Yep, and like I said, we will send, we automatically send people who have attended a version of the slides. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up. Just let you know that chapter 2, it is a long chapter usually. Some schools have page length requirements, some schools don't. I've seen lit reviews as short as 10 pages, and I've seen lit reviews as long as 80 pages. The typical, I would say a typical length is more around 25 to 30. And they're just big, and they're a little trying. They're tough, but you know, you can get through it with help of your chair. And if you think you need our help, we're here. So yeah, they're a challenge, but they're a challenge that can be met. So okay, if there's no more questions, I'm going to let you go. We do offer these presentations every week on different aspects of the dissertation. Just check our website to see what we're doing for that week. Sometimes it'll be methods related. Sometimes it will be, you know, on theory and research. So just check and see what you need, and give us a call, make an appointment if you think you might need more help. All right, thank you for attending. Have a great day.